The hospital ship Solace traveled through the vastness of space, a beacon of hope in a fractured galaxy. With its unmistakable design, pulsating white lights and the universal emblem of medical neutrality, its mission was clear: to save lives. But fate was unkind. A brutal explosion destroyed the ship within moments, leaving only debris. Colony sensors picked up its distress signal briefly before falling silent. The attack, attributed to the Zilans, sent shockwaves through the interstellar community. For the first time, the universal laws of war had been broken. On Earth, the impact was immediate. Admiral Ethan Morgan, a veteran of interplanetary conflicts, led the fleet with renewed determination. To him, the attack on the Solace was more than an affront. It was a direct challenge to humanity itself. While politicians debated the course of retaliation, Morgan knew that hesitation meant vulnerability. He ordered the fleet to mobilize toward New Bastion, a strategic fortress planet, fully aware that his decision might ignite an all-out war. Aboard the flagship Dauntless, Arya Vance meticulously reviewed data from the attack, trying to uncover the motives behind the Zilans' brutality. Beside her, Captain Darius Kale remained silent, haunted by painful memories of his past. He had lost everything to the Zilans and now saw the conflict as his chance to seek justice. But Arya, ever the rational one, suspected that the situation held a deeper mystery. Why attack a target that would only provoke universal outrage? She questioned. This isn't strategy. It's provocation. Humanity was no stranger to war. With colonies spread across neighboring systems, Earth led a coalition fractured by distrust and internal disputes. The Zilans, on the other hand, were known for their stealth and advanced technology, though their motives remained enigmatic. Yet this conflict seemed less about territory and more deliberate. Something about the Zilans' behavior defied conventional logic, and this troubled Arya more than the destruction of the hospital ship. As the fleet entered warp space en route to New Bastion, Morgan couldn't ignore the weight of his decision. The Zylan attack had shattered a galactic taboo, but retaliation risked escalating a war that could engulf everything. Watching the stars stretch and distort from the command bridge, he knew the real battle would not be just military. It would be moral. How far could they go to protect humanity without sacrificing their very essence? The Earth fleet advanced through hyperspace, but the atmosphere aboard the ships was far from calm. In the metallic corridors of the Dauntless, the crew worked in silence, their exchanged glances reflecting apprehension and uncertainty. In the command room, Morgan studied the data from the attack on the Solace. There's no mistake, he said to Arya. They knew exactly what they were destroying. But Arya persisted. None of this makes sense. Attacking a hospital ship isn't strategy. It's an invitation to chaos. Morgan nodded in agreement, though doubt had begun to take root in his mind. Morgan knew that leading the fleet to New Bastion was a risk. The Earth Assembly was still debating an official stance, with many politicians advocating for restraint. But Morgan, a battle-hardened veteran, felt that hesitation would be fatal. If we don't act now, the next ship attacked will be a colony, he told Kale, who responded with a firm nod. While Morgan saw his decision as necessary, Arya questioned whether humanity was ready to escalate a conflict without fully understanding its adversaries. Kale spent his nights reviewing Zylan strategies, but his mind often drifted to the past. He remembered Ardent Nova, the colony where his wife and son had been killed in a Zylan attack years earlier. For him, this war was more than a matter of survival, it was personal. Arya, who had known him for years, watched silently. She knew Kale's anger could be both a strength and a liability. "Can you lead without letting hatred consume you?" she asked. He didn't answer. As the fleet advanced, a reconnaissance team recovered something unusual from the Solace's wreckage: a partially destroyed Zylan drone. In the analysis room, scientists and engineers worked together to uncover its secrets. What they discovered was disturbing. The drone contained human biological samples, DNA fragments extracted from the Solace's passengers. They weren't just attacking, Arya said, her voice tight with emotion. They were collecting. The discovery of the drone created tension among the crew. Many began questioning the true purpose behind the Zylan attacks. "If they're studying us, Then why? An officer asked. Morgan called a meeting with his senior commanders, where Arya suggested the Zilans might be searching for something specific in human biology. Maybe this isn't just about war, she proposed. Maybe it's about survival. Kale, furious, retorted, it doesn't matter. They crossed the line. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace, New Bastion appeared ahead, a fortress planet surrounded by defensive rings and ships in formation. It was a symbol of humanity's resistance, but also a reminder of its failures. Years ago, New Bastion had been the site of a humiliating defeat against the Zilans, and the weight of that memory hung over everyone. This time will be different, Morgan promised himself, but even he knew that confidence alone wouldn't be enough. As the ships took their positions, the sensors picked up a Zylan transmission. The message, automatically translated, was direct and cryptic. You have crossed the point of no return. What we do is for the survival of all. Not just ours. The words left the command bridge in silence. They're trying to justify a massacre, Kale said bitterly. But Arya was less certain. What if they actually believe it? The question went unanswered as Morgan ordered the fleet to assume a defensive formation. After arriving at New Bastion, the fleet began analyzing the data recovered from the Zylan drone. Amid incomprehensible patterns of language and biological codes, Eidolon, the fleet's artificial intelligence, detected an anomaly in a nearby sector. There's something unusual here, the AI reported. It appears to be an inactive or abandoned Zylan ship. Morgan, eager to find answers, ordered a team to investigate. To him, this ship might hold the key to understanding the Zylan's intentions. As the team prepared for the mission, a second Zylan transmission was intercepted. This time, the message wasn't a threat but a warning. What you seek will only bring destruction. Do not interfere. The message sparked heated debates among the fleet. Arya suggested that the Zylans might be trying to protect something dangerous, while Kale dismissed it as a bluff to deter them. However, Morgan saw it as an opportunity. If they're trying to stop us, it means we have something to gain. Upon reaching the ship, the team encountered something that defied logic. The interior was a hybrid of technology and biology, with organic corridors that pulsed as if alive. In a central chamber, they discovered an alien database connected to biotechnological systems. With Eidolon's assistance, the team accessed fragmented records that revealed a terrifying truth. The Zylans were attempting to modify their biology to withstand a cosmic threat. This isn't a war against us, Arya concluded. They're fighting against time. The data analyzed by Eidolon revealed more than just the Zylans' intentions. It mentioned an entity, a cosmic phenomenon described as a universal consuming force. It's as if they're trying to adapt before something reaches them, Arya explained. But what was this entity? How did it relate to the attacks on humanity? The question lingered as Morgan began to wonder if the Earth fleet was fighting the wrong war. The revelation of the Zylans' motives sparked ethical dilemmas within the fleet. Kale, still consumed by hatred, argued that the Zylans were using the cosmic threat as an excuse to justify their attacks. They sacrificed civilians, he said. Nothing absolves them. But Arya saw a more complex picture. What if they're right? What if what they're doing is the only way to survive? The disagreement between the two ran deep, and Morgan knew a decision would need to be made soon. While analyzing the data from the Zylan ship, Eidolon detected an energy pattern similar to something larger, a massive object moving at the edge of the system. Whatever it is, it's heading toward us, the AI reported. Arya and Kale immediately understood. This could be the first sign of the entity described by the Zylans. This is what they're trying to avoid, Arya said. And now it's following us too. Morgan gathered his leadership to discuss the next steps. Despite their differences, both Kale and Arya agreed on one thing. If the fleet was to survive, they needed to understand the nature of what they were facing. If the Zylans know more about this, we'll need them, Morgan said, surprising everyone. He ordered a transmission to the Zylans, a formal request for a ceasefire and collaboration. The message was clear. If this threat is real, we will face it together, or we will fall alone. The transmission sent by the Earth fleet was received, and the Zylan response was cryptic. We accept, But know that this alliance will be temporary. Our goal is survival. The words offered little comfort, but to Morgan it was progress. He knew that mistrust between the two species would be a major obstacle, yet he also understood that the circumstances left no other choice. Survival requires sacrifices, even if it means working with our enemies, he declared. A Zylan delegation was sent to the Dauntless to establish the terms of the alliance. Arya and Kale were among the human representatives chosen to lead the meeting. When the Zilans emerged from their transport ship, their slender forms and precise movements immediately caused discomfort. For Kale, it was a visual reminder of all he had lost. But Arya, ever observant, noticed something more. The Zilans seemed exhausted, as if they carried an invisible burden. They're as close to the edge as we are, she thought. During the meeting, the Zilans revealed crucial data about the entity they called the Devourer. It was a cosmic force that fed on matter and advanced energy, drawn to concentrations of technology. You have accelerated its arrival, said the Zylan commander, Zesh, addressing Morgan. Your fleet, your weapons. All of it has caught its attention. Arya was stunned. We're its fuel, she murmured. The revelation made it clear that both humans and Zylans had contributed to their own peril. Despite the exchange of information, collaboration between the species was fraught with conflict. Kale viewed the Zylans as opportunists, while many Zylans considered humans naive and impulsive. During a heated argument, Kale confronted Zesh. You speak of survival, but you've sacrificed human lives as if they meant nothing. Zesh responded coldly, sacrifices are inevitable. We have lost our own as well. Or do you think only your pain matters? The tension between the two was palpable, but Morgan intervened. If we continue like this, neither of us will have a future, he warned. As the Devourer drew closer, the joint fleet devised a desperate plan. The entity had an unstable core that could be disrupted with a coordinated attack. However, this would require a ship to penetrate deep into the entity and deploy a reverse energy charge, an experimental technology created by the Zylans. It will be a suicide mission, said Zesh, his voice steady. Without hesitation, Kale volunteered. If someone has to do it, it's me. Arya tried to protest, but Kale was resolute. You know there's no other way, he said. As the ship for the mission was prepared, Arya and Kale shared one final moment together. You don't have to do this, she pleaded, but Kale shook his head. I've already lost everything, Arya. Maybe this is my chance to do something that matters. Zesh, observing the interaction from a distance, stepped forward. You won't be alone, he said to Kale. I'll go too. My species has a debt to yours, and it begins here. Zesh's decision surprised everyone but brought a rare moment of mutual respect between the two. With Kale and Zesh aboard the prepared ship, the fleet initiated its attack on the Devourer. While the combined forces fired to distract the entity, Kale and Zesh piloted their ship deep into its structure. Inside, they found chaos, an endless maelstrom of energy and matter, shifting and mutating in ways that defied comprehension. This isn't just a force, Zesh said, his voice filled with both awe and fear. It's a consciousness, and it's learning. At the core, they discovered a biotechnological structure, evidence that the Devourer wasn't a natural phenomenon but something created by intelligent hands. Kale and Zesh pressed deeper into the Devourer, guided by the ship's automated systems as they navigated a landscape that seemed to shift with every moment. Pulsating walls made of biological energy stretched out like veins, reacting to their presence. From a distance, Eidolon monitored the mission and issued a warning. The core structure is unstable. Every second here increases the risk of collapse. Zesh, drawing on his Zylan expertise, recognized patterns eerily similar to his species' technologies. This was created, he murmured. By whom, or for what purpose, we still don't know. At the heart of the entity, Kale and Zesh discovered what resembled a biotechnological brain, a fusion of artificial intelligence and organic matter. Eidolon's sensors confirmed. There is an energy signature here that matches the data from the Zylan ship. Zesh, stunned, recognized the pattern. This technology, it's an extension of something we began centuries ago. We tried to create an entity to manage galactic resources, but it escaped our control and became this. Kale glared at Zesh, anger boiling. You did this? And dragged us into this war. Zesh did not defend himself. He acknowledged that his species had created the Devourer without fully understanding its potential. We thought we were building something to bring balance, he said. But we underestimated its ability to evolve and consume. Now we're all paying the price. For Kale, it was hard to accept. His hatred for the Zilans burned brighter, but he knew the moment called for focus. That doesn't matter now. What matters is stopping it. The only way to deploy the reverse energy charge into the core was to directly link the ship to the biotechnological structure. Zesh realized what this meant. Someone would need to remain connected to activate the charge. I'll stay, he said. Kale protested, but Zesh stood firm. My species created this. It's my responsibility. Kale hesitated but knew Zesh was right. Before connecting himself, Zesh looked at Kale. If you survive, remember this. Mistakes can be corrected. If you choose to. Outside, the joint fleet continued their assault, buying time for the mission. When the charge was finally activated, a massive collapse began consuming the Devourer from within. The fleet withdrew, watching as the entity imploded in a stunning display of light and destruction. Despite the apparent victory, Eidolon detected something alarming. Residual signals from the Devourer still lingered, scattered across the system. It was not completely destroyed, the AI warned. Fragments of the entity may be dormant but still pose a threat. Arya proposed studying the fragments to better understand the danger, but Kale objected. We've already seen what it can do. We can't take that risk, he argued. Aware of the complexity of the situation, Morgan decided to postpone the decision. With the core's destruction, the Earth fleet and the Zilans achieved a temporary truce, though tensions remained high. Reflecting on all they had learned, Arya approached Kale. Zesh was right, she said. We can correct our mistakes. But that requires something humans and Zilans have always avoided, trust. Kale, still burdened by resentment, replied, maybe one day, but not today. As the fleet regrouped, Morgan understood that the true battle was not just against cosmic entities but against the destructive nature ingrained in both species. After the collapse of the Devourer's core, the fleet detected anomalies scattered across the system. Small fragments of the entity lay dormant but remained active enough to interfere with navigation and communication systems. These fragments still carry traces of the central consciousness, Eidolon warned. They may react if exposed to sufficient stimuli. Aware of the danger, Morgan ordered the fleet to avoid direct contact, but the risk was clear. The threat was far from over. The Devourer's fragments were not only a technical challenge, they also left emotional scars. The crew of the Dauntless was exhausted, and Zesh's sacrifice became a point of contention. Some saw his actions as a symbol of redemption, while others, like Kale, viewed them as a bitter reminder of Zylan culpability. They created this, Kale muttered to himself, and now we have to clean up their mess. Arya, however, saw an opportunity to learn. If we don't use this to change, we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes. During an operation to neutralize an active fragment, a joint human-Zylan team encountered issues. A human officer accused the Zylans of sabotage, while the Zylans claimed the humans were acting recklessly. The situation escalated quickly, creating tensions within the command structure. Morgan intervened, but the sparks between the two species were undeniable. This is exactly what the Devourer wants, Morgan said during a meeting with Zylan and human leaders. If we don't work together, it has already won. Arya and her team led a detailed analysis of the captured fragments. Using Zylan data and human technology, they discovered that the fragments retained a residual memory of the central entity. These aren't just inert pieces, Arya explained. They can evolve and rebuild parts of the Devourer. Even more alarming was the discovery that the fragments were attracting signals from other systems. If we don't neutralize them, they could summon something worse, Eidolon warned. The analysis of the fragments sparked an ethical debate between humans and Zylans. Some Zylan leaders proposed using the fragments to develop defenses against future entities. while Arya argued that manipulating the technology could trigger another disaster. "We're playing with fire," she said. "We can't repeat their mistakes." Kale supported Arya, insisting that the fragments should be destroyed. However, a faction within the human fleet saw potential in the technology, further fueling divisions. As tensions grew, Morgan made a difficult decision. Prioritize the destruction of active fragments but preserve a small number for controlled study. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," he said. "But we can't become like them." The fleet began preparing specialized weapons to deal with the remaining fragments, while Eidolon monitored for any signs of external activity. "There's something else out there," the AI warned. "These fragments aren't the end. They're the beginning." During ongoing neutralization operations, the fleet received a transmission from a remote system. It was an ancient signal, buried in the layers of time, yet it seemed to respond to the presence of the fragments. The origin of the signal was unknown, but the Zilans recognized part of the pattern as something from their own history. "This is impossible," Zesh had mentioned in the data left before his sacrifice. "If this message is real, perhaps we are not alone in this fight." Morgan ordered an investigation, knowing that the next phase of their journey would take them even deeper into the unknown. The neutralization operations continued, with the Earth fleet and the Zilans working side by side to eliminate the active fragments of the Devourer. Despite ongoing tensions, the joint teams successfully destroyed most of the anomalies. However, 3 fragments were preserved for study under extremely controlled conditions. Arya, who led the analyses, understood the risks. "We're dancing on the edge of an abyss," she told Morgan. "But perhaps it's the only way to learn how to prevent another disaster." Zesh's sacrifice became a complex symbol for both humans and Zilans. To some, he was a hero who prioritized survival over the pride of his species. To others, he was a reminder of Zylan guilt and the cost of their hubris. In a speech to his crew, Morgan was resolute. "Zesh gave us a choice. It's up to us now to honor that sacrifice with actions, not words." The Admiral's words reverberated through the fleet, briefly uniting a crew still struggling to reconcile their hatred and mistrust. The mysterious transmission from the galaxy's edge continued to intrigue both humans and Zilans. Eidolon managed to decode part of the message, revealing fragments of text that mentioned the architects and the lost balance. The Zilans recognized these references as part of their ancient history, though even they were uncertain of the full meaning. "If what we suspect is true," a Zylan leader said, "we may be nothing more than pieces in a much larger game." Morgan decided to send a small expedition to investigate the signal while the main fleet remained at New Bastion to resupply. With the fragments contained and the central entity destroyed, the joint fleet experienced a rare moment of calm. Yet no one believed it was the end. "Every answer we've found has only raised more questions," Arya said to Kale during a rare moment of rest. Kale, still bearing the weight of his losses, replied, "And maybe we'll never have all the answers. But at least now we have a chance to fight." On the bridge of the Dauntless, Morgan and Arya gazed at the stars as the ship remained in orbit over New Bastion. "Working with the Zilans still feels strange," Morgan admitted. "But it's undeniable that without them, we'd be dead." Arya nodded. "Maybe the biggest mystery is why it takes such a massive threat for us to realize how similar we are." Morgan smiled, a weary but genuine smile. "If we can build something from this, maybe it'll be worth it." As the fleet activated its warp drives to depart, the universe seemed more vast than ever. Every distant star felt like it held a new mystery, a new threat, or perhaps even a new chance for redemption. In his final report to the Earth Assembly, Morgan wrote, "The war is not over, it has simply changed. But for the first time, I see a possibility for something beyond conflict. The question is whether we'll have the courage to pursue it." His words echoed through the void of space, a reminder that the real challenge was not survival but evolution. As the fleet set course to investigate the origin of the mysterious signal, Eidolon delivered a final thought. "What we faced was only a shadow of what lies ahead. But perhaps it's the shadow that has made us look toward the light." With that, the ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a trail of uncertainties, and a promise that the story of humanity and the Zilans was only just beginning.